To start with our first lesson for the second quarter, we have Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. And attributed to this lesson is a lesson in literature, which is theme in poetry. Hopefully, you've received my message last night where we are going to do a short poetry reading of this. And if time does not allow, you know already what to do. You are going to send a video of your presentation of your poetry reading through Edmodo. I like what happened last week where three students from your class already did their turn. And perhaps, I think these three are Vem, Kathy, and Kim. No? Perhaps these three performances showed to the rest of the class a possible way by which they can really do poetry reading in a manner that you are not restricting yourselves. I also kind of mentioned last week that if correct me if I'm wrong, sorry. I mentioned last week that if your performance does not match the standards of correct poetry reading, what will I do? Vem, what will I do, Vem? In case the poetry reading is not done with justice.
If it's done here, sir, you'll stop the person or you'll not give any score if it's the recorded one.
Okay, so take note of that. Again, it did not just come out from. I did not just mention it. I did not keep that to myself. I shared it to everybody that if your turn comes to be called in this session and that your reading does not match the expected style for poetry reading, I'll tell you to stop. Or during the recording that you'll send me, if your reading does not again match the standards of correct poetry reading, your output will not be given a score at all. And I think that's fair enough. In fact, luckier are those, the way I see it, no, but please don't see it to be unfair. But luckier are those who will take the turn of doing it as a recording because they have the chance to practice more, or that if they're not satisfied with their performance, they can redo the doing of their video. But the way I see it as well, it doesn't make much more sense. It doesn't make much difference if I call you to do it now, because at any rate you are required to really deliver the correct projection expected of one to do poetry reading. So be it in a recording or be it in a Zoom session, you are still expected to really exhibit the correct style of doing poetry reading. Look at what happened to Vem, Kathy, and Kent last week. Did they require retakes? They did not. When I asked them to do the poetry reading, the reading of what was the selection last time? Oh, I forgot the name of the selection. What's the selection?
Sonnet 29, sir, by
Sonnet
George.
29 by George Santana. Yeah, that one. What is the name of the author? George Santayana. Sir, now I'm also getting confused because so many of you said it differently. Sonnet 29 by George Santanaya. Who is George Santanaya? The name is already there and all you have to do is to read the name. And I was then impressed, okay, the ones who refused to really project last time did project better in their video recordings. I think that's out of fear, for the fear of not getting scored. Soon it will become nature of you, it will become part of you in your nature to really do poetry reading with so much justice. Sorry if it had to start this way where there's a consequence if you fail to really do uh, poetry reading properly. But my purpose, my intention here is that you develop that good style of doing poetry reading or doing reading in doing reading with poetic selections. This supposedly this quarter we are to have grammar, but I would not want these selections to go to waste, especially that we just had the lessons on poetry reading. I'd like that while the lesson is fresh, the activities from the last quarter are still fresh, you can still tap into those experiences and activities in relation to the first few lessons that we'll have for this quarter. Before we do Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, we'll focus first on the literary lesson that is ascribed to this topic, and that's the theme in poetry. Every selection in literature is bound to a particular theme. That's a fact in literature. Whatever selection you make, you have to have a theme. The theme is generally the idea that governs the literary work found in your that the idea that governs the literary work which you intend readers to examine. Sometimes we readers have the chance or have the capacity to identify the theme by ourselves. We can do that. But the best person to tell us of the theme of any of these literary selections is no other than the author, him or herself. Only one person knows the exact theme that's found in the selection, and that's the author. If only, of course, we could ask for the author to be in our midst, we would then be told right away of what the theme is. The best thing that we can do is to simply guess the theme from that selection. But making this guess is not going to be a blind activity. It's not a blind task for us to know the theme of a selection. We have to, of course, understand the selection in its full context, and from there, we will now know the meaning of the text or the theme that the text wants to convey. Themes may be major or minor themes. You have there an example of the work of Jane Austen entitled Pride and Prejudice. The major theme in the selection is matrimony or marriage, while at the same time, that selection foreshoots several minor themes. A few of them are love, friendship, and affection. So it's all right for you to give out the minor theme or to give out the major theme out from the selection. But what's important here is you be able to identify the meat or the main topic or idea that makes this selection come to life. At some point, themes can even be interchanged with the subject. But to set a clear distinction, the subject is merely a topic that serves as the foundation of a literary work, whereas the theme can be strictly identified as an opinion expressed on the subject. Sometimes it would be highly suggested that when you give out a theme, it is expressed in phrases or in sentence form. But there are also others who give out a theme as a single word or a word or two, like that of the example given in the module. You have the line, I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love in I and my Annabelle Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. By reading this verse, obviously you have here a persona who has expressed or has felt so much love. This persona just has so much love to give. And this persona is extending it to Annabelle Lee. For sure, you know the author of this work. Who authored Annabelle Lee? It's supposed to be some general knowledge that everybody is informed right now. Al, who authored Annabelle Lee? Al.
I don't know, sir.
No googling ha, no googling.
I don't know, sir. Maybe Annabelle, sir.
Wow, Al. I got so enlightened there with that answer, Al. Al, Annabelle Lee is the receiver of the love, Al. So we have a narcissist, Al, if that's the case. No. Annabelle expressing that love towards herself. Annabelle, how narcissistic can you get? Ken, who authored Annabelle, Ken?
I'm just gonna guess, sir.
Go.
William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare is not the author of Annabelle, sorry. No Googling, no Googling. Recall. He is a famous writer. Like, dead famous. Dead. Oh, the person also is also dead by now. He's not anymore living. Oh, clue. He is not anymore living. Mad. I hope, Mad, you didn't Google this. Mad raised his hand and now he's gone. What happened?
Oh, sir,
There.
I
Mad.
po,
Again.
so,
Fernando
Alan
Po.
po,
Fernando Po.
so I remember Po basta Po is
Who is that Po?
Edgar
Mano Po.
Edgar
Father
Poe.
Father Po in Baclayon. Who's
Ay,
that Po?
Edgar Allan Poe.
You have Edgar Allan Poe. Correct. Edgar Allan Poe is the author of the of one of the greatest selections of love in literature, and that's Annabelle. Just look at that line, people. But we loved with a love that was more than love. So what kind of love is that now? We loved with a love that was more than love. That's beyond the general concept of love, because according to the speaker here, the feeling of love that he has for Annabelle is beyond the general notion of love, the general concept of love. So there again, we have a love poem, and truth is, Annabelle stands as one of the greatest love poems in the world, in the field of literature. And yes, if you see there, you have the word love as the possible theme or subject. So love there can be seen or perhaps better understood as the subject of the selection. And if you want, you can express the theme there as love unconditionally, or a person must learn to love unconditionally. O, diba? Or unconditional love can be can be an extension of that as the theme. Another example is The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. You have there the lines, half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death, rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. I don't know with you, but at the time that I was reading it, I could actually imagine or visualize what's going on. Have you reached that point when you read this verse, or while you were listening to the verse, you were able to imagine what happened? Imagine, oh, rode the 600. So that should show in your minds, or you should be able to imagine a group of several men ready to embark into battle or into war. Especially that you have words, charge for the guns, forward the light brigade. So I think, I don't know with you again, but when I read it, I was able to imagine one man commanding a particular fleet or army, telling them to charge or advance towards the enemy flanking on the other side. Into the valley of death rode the 600. So it's safe to say that this extracted verse from Tennyson's The Charge of the Light Brigade contains the main theme or major theme of war. It could be also identified as the major subject, which is war. And then you can extend it further. You can extend it by saying that war naturally leads to death. That could be another theme. Sometimes there are also readers who tend to interchange the theme and the message. The theme, let's try to clear it out. The theme is the idea that the author actually injected to the selection. Technically speaking, the author provided the theme. So like what I said earlier, if only we could ask the author to be around, we would know what the exact theme is. It's just that if for so many of the literary selections that we will encounter, the author could probably be dead, or that the author is located somewhere very far that we cannot ask for the author to be in our midst. For the message, it is an idea that we readers get to formulate out from the selection. Sometimes the theme and the message may turn out to be the same, but it is possible that the reader gets to formulate an idea which might be different from what the author wanted to project. Because of course, the reader has his or her own background on how to understand a text. Take for instance, let's go back to the verse coming from Annabelle. And again, the line said, I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle. With a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. Edgar Allan Poe simply wanted to convey love from that selection. But what if one reader would say, I think, sir, that this selection is beyond, it's not love, it's lust. And then we would ask that person, what made you think that it's lust and not love? Then, logically, the person would say, look, sir, they already started feeling that way when they were still children. It won't make sense, sir, for them to start their libido, sir, is already there. They're still so young to be saying those things. I think, sir, they're so immature of what really love is. They're still children. That's just lust, sir. That's not love. They don't know the real essence of love. Kids saying something like that, that doesn't make sense. So see, that's a possibility. The author's opinion, the author's idea might be different from the reader's opinion. And that's a very big possibility. Of course, we do not totally discount the reader from formulating his or her own idea coming from the text. So what we want you to do is, when you are told to identify the theme, be sure that you have enough explanation to support your choice of a theme. Do not just give me the poem talks about life. Because if that answer is what you'll only give, there could be a lot of doubts on where that theme came out. Just because the word is in the word life is in the title doesn't mean that it's generally the theme. It has to be well explained. It has to really come out in terms of elaborations on why you were able to derive that theme from the text. And if you are also told to identify the message from the selection, tell us of what you learned. It's like that. If it were in prose, if it were with short stories, novels, this is relative to the question, what moral have you learned, or what moral did you get from the selection? What lesson did you get from the selection? But of course, do not expect me to say what moral lesson you got from the selection. You know, I hope you know the problem with the phrase moral lesson. Does everybody know that the error with the term moral lesson? A moral is already a lesson in itself. In the same way, the lesson is already a form of a moral. So we just have to say, what moral have you gotten from the selection? What lesson have you gotten from the selection? That the answer to these questions is the message that we want you to get, to formulate. For instance, remember If by Rudyard Kipling? If by Rudyard Kipling. What theme can you get? Theme, take note, theme. What theme can you get from Rudyard Kipling's If? Ken?
Um, wait, sir, I'm starting to forget the.
Wait, Ken is starting to forget.
Wait, sir.
What about okay, Ken, it's all right, Ken. No pressure, no pressure there. Kathy, what about Kathy? What theme can you get, Kath, from If of Rudyard Kipling?
Life sick?
Huh?
Life sick?
What then? Like what I said earlier, be ready to explain. Go, Kath.
It's because like it talks about, I mean, like what I said before, sir, it kind of guided it will serve as a guide for like people whenever diba, the author provided situations or
Correct.
scenarios where like what and how a person should act in that ano, moment. So yeah, sir, that's why I think that life is a
Look at what Kathy did. Look at the process that she went through. She gave us a word, according to her. If by Rudyard Kipling talks about life, but it did not end there. There needs to be an addition of what makes that theme come out from the selection. And according to Kathy, the selection If by Rudyard Kipling tells us serves as a guide of what you can do come circumstances or situations that you'll face. In the presence of these uncertainties, this is what you'll do in your life. So that's the explanation provided by Kathy. Let's go to A Sum of Life. I don't know, never mind A Sum of Life because that's so obvious. For sure, you'll again say, life, sir. Let's go with this one. For sure, you should know this. I've mentioned this already before. What's the theme in All Things Bright and Beautiful? That elementary selection will not be pardoned. We will use that for this for this lesson. What's the theme in All Things Bright and Beautiful? Them.
Sir, honestly, sir, I don't know the poem, sir.
Them, what happened? Them. Okay, let's give them the time to read it at home tonight. Ma'am, please find the time to read All Things Bright and Beautiful, ma'am, because it's a very dramatic selection, ma'am. It will bring you to tears for sure. Ken, what's the theme in All Things Bright and Beautiful?
I'm not
Don't-
familiar of the poems that sir,
don't tell me that you're not familiar with the poem, Kita. Don't
but
you dare
like
tell me.
I got the thought of the poem lang, sir.
Go.
But I don't know the whole poem, Jud. Poem. Yeah. I think the theme there is ano,
Wait. Did you not have All Things Bright and Beautiful when you were in elementary?
ano lang sir. Bob has a ball. The ball bounces high.
And up until now, the ball still keeps bouncing. The ball bounces every year. And Bob just does it every. I still have to wonder why Bob never got bored of bouncing that ball. Why he has to do that every year. Go, Kim. What theme can you get from All Things Bright and Beautiful?
I think sir, the theme in All Things Bright and Beautiful is ano, the beauty of life. Sir.
Beauty of life, or perhaps the beauty of God's creation.
Yes.
All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things bright and wonderful. The Lord God made them all. Each little flower that opens, each little bird that sings, He gave their tiny colors, He made their tiny wings. Huy, what happened to you? That's an elementary selection. Find the time. Go. Forget Bob, because Bob right now is bouncing something else. Probably his belly. but not anymore a ball. So forget Bob. Find the time to read these poems in elementary. So look at what happened. What happened there? Kint identified the theme of appreciation of the beauty or the beauty of God's creations. If only Kint had read all of the verses in the selection, then for sure he'd be able to provide an explanation of where in the text that theme comes out or why that theme comes out. But from the title alone, from the sheer mentioning in the title, all things bright and beautiful, that gives I think that's what gave Kent an idea of what this selection might be all about. A quick segue. Do you know of the poem that talks about the 12 months of the year? It's entitled 30 Days of September. It's a I learned this when I was in grade 2. And up until now, I could not forget it. It even goes this way. 30 days of September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except for February, which alone has 28. Leap year comes one day in 4 and adds to one. Leap year comes 1 year in 4 and adds to February 1 day more. That's a grade 2 selection. And every time then, whenever I wanted to know which month had 30 days, which month had 31 days, I always recite that poem to myself. I don't do this, Kent. I don't do this one. I never understood this actually at first. Now, and then there are the gaps here tell you of a particular month. I never understood that. But what I did, I think by being an English teacher already came to me even when I was in elementary. Because for every time that I wanted to know the months that have 30 and 31 days, I always recite that poem to myself. 30 days of September, April, June, ano. So you have April, June, November, and September. All the rest of 31. Okay. Except for February. So I always tell myself that. Oh, what happened to you naman? Huh? There's also one in what about it? Let's mention a Filipino poem, a Filipino. Ma'am LV is listening. Let's mention a Filipino poem. Ako ay Filipino. Hala, you do not know that? Did they recite Ako ay Filipino, Ma'am? Kulay kayo manggi. See, Ma'am LV said that it's given in the elementary department. It even goes this way, oh. Ako ay Pilipino, kulay kayo manggi, kilala sa mundo, mabait, mabuti, sariling wika ko siyang ginagamit upang pagkakaisa ng bansay makamit. Sa isip at kilos, namumukod ako, hindi nawawala pagka Pilipino. That's a grade 2 poem that I was able to memorize, and I can still memorize it up until now. What happened to you? You do not forget the selections that you've read before. But if I were to ask you, have you heard of the latest incident about what happened to your neighbor? For sure, you'd know it. And you'd be able to recall it after several years. When you talk among yourselves, yeah, I can recall that a year, di ba last year, di ba 2 years ago, something. When it comes to these things, you are surely well updated and you have good retention. By the way, if you look at the activity, diba, can you find this activity in your module? You will not find there FT1, FT2, and FT3. You have there 3 poems entitled A Time to Talk, Awakening in New York, and Introduction to Poetry. Expect that on Thursday, I'll ask you to read, take note of this. I'll ask you to read and then identify the theme. So that's what you'll do. Read and identify the theme on Thursday. So when I call on you, I'll ask you first to read the selection and then you'll be told to identify the theme. But look at the process that Kathy did earlier. When she gave me the theme, She provided it with an explanation. It's not going to be enough to say, a time to talk, sir, talks about talking. Malamang, the word talk is in the title. But you have to give good reasons on what makes that, or on why that selection revolves around the theme of talking. We now go to Death Be Not Proud. For sure, you're going to find there old English words. Words that are not anymore grammatically acceptable in the present time, but they are applicable when it comes to literature. You can practice using them in literature, but when it comes to grammar, we defray from using them. It's in back. So we have Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. Take note, in the reading of the title, there is a comma placed after the word death. What kind of figure of speech does this? How do you call that figure of speech that considers something inanimate, addresses it as if it were present in your midst? What figure of speech is this? When people find that answer, they'll still wonder, what is that? Trixley, what figure of speech are we talking about?
I have no idea, sir.
There's already something that Kim placed in the chat box. See, all that they're seeing, Kim, is this. What figure of speech? Take note that it's a figure of speech that addresses something non-existent, physically existent, considering it as if it were physically around or physically in front of you. For a while, for a while. In Filipino, this figure of speech also exists. Like tukso, layuan mo ako. Tukso is a physically non-existent concept. I mean, it's abstract, but it's considered to be present or in front of you. And though you can't see it, you're addressing it like it's really there. In Filipino, we call that pagtawag. In English, we call it, of course, not calling. How do we call it? Hero.
I don't have any idea, sir.
There's already something that Kim placed in the chat box. What did Kim place in the chat box? Ken, how do you call it, Ken?
Apostrophe.
Apostrophe, correct. Look at what Kim placed. All that he placed there is an apostrophe. It's not a double quotation mark. It's an apostrophe. So that figure of speech employed by John Donne in the title is an apostrophe, making death appear as though it's a person, though it's an abstract concept, making it appear as though it's a person to whom a message has been sent or directed. That is why there needs to be a comma placed after the word death. This poem is not intended to be read as Death Be Not Proud. Consider death as though it's an entity you are conversing with a comma that tells you that there should be a pause after the mentioning of the name of death. Death, be not proud. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be much pleasure. Then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings and desperate men, and dost with poison, war and sickness dwell, and poppy or charms can make us sleep as well and better than thy stroke. Why swellst thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. This poem by John Donne points at death and tells death that it's not powerful over the speaker. The speaker believes that death exists, but it's not strong to make death be a master of his or her life, of the speaker's life. The speaker here points out that he himself is still the master of his own life, and that death cannot overrule him or her. I don't know how it sounded to you, but I felt that when I was reading it, I felt that our speaker here has a strong personality. Did you get the same thing? The speaker has a strong personality for the speaker to stand up against death. The speaker, though it's been told that we are not to fear death, I feel like the speaker here is beyond the notion of just simply being able to conquer death. The speaker is just really brave to stand up against death. And like what I've done, like what I've reminded you in the previous weeks, the way I read the poem earlier is not the only way to do it. Of course, you're entitled to have your own style. You're entitled to have your own projection in doing poetry reading. Just make sure that when you do it, it's done with justice. Time is already 8:30, so I think that puts it. No, let's just do it this way. And on Thursday, I think the activity can be answered in not less than 15, not more than 15 minutes, not more than 15 or 20 minutes. So we can spare the rest of the time for our poetry reading in class. So we can do the poetry reading on Thursday in class. At the same time, if others cannot really make it, I mean, if time is not enough still for a few, these few are the only ones who will do their recording. Reminder, not everybody has submitted. The only ones who are expected not to submit a video for Sonnet 29 are Vem, Kathy, and Kent. So supposedly, for a while, let me check. For Sonnet 29, I am expected to have 23 poems in total. 23 recordings because Bem, Kathy, and Kent would put the total to 26. As of today, I only have 16 recordings. So 7 recordings have not been submitted yet. And I think it's fair enough now that I'm going to charge deductions to those who are doing it late. I mean, it's already been like a week, more than a week now, since that activity has been given. It's fair enough that deductions will be charged to those who did it late. So for that's how we are going to conclude our meeting for today. Goodbye and thank you, grade 9. Goodbye.